may I have your attention, please? Thank you so much for your patience. We are still getting people in the door here and also in the overflow room. What an awesome problem to have. Isn't that awesome? So be patient with us for about 1 more minute, and we're going to go ahead and start the program. Is our overflow room filled? No, this is. Okay, all right. So anybody, if you really want to sit, please feel free to go to the overflow room where we'll be showing the program via video. I know everybody really wants to be right here in this room, though, right? Good evening to all of you. I am Anita Favors Thompson. I'm the city manager for the city of Tallahassee, Florida, the great city of Tallahassee, Florida. And it's my pleasure to be here with you this evening as we celebrate an unveiling of the Leon County Civil Rights Heritage Sidewalk. You are going to be so impressed, and we just can't wait to show it to you. When it comes to civil rights, it is very obvious to me that many people in this room that I know, and probably many that I don't know, have stories of their own to share about their own personal involvement in the civil rights movement and also the involvement of their family members. Tonight we are honoring a special group of individuals and honoring them in a very special way with a beautiful sidewalk that helps tell their story. It helps tell the story of the bus boycott in the 1950s and the lunch counter sit-ins. The people who took part in those events and other civil rights events are often referred to as foot soldiers. They are true heroes, and many of you can attest to the personal heroism of these individuals. They took extraordinary risks because of a belief that all people should be treated fairly. You as foot soldiers or relatives or friends or people who are interested in being here to honor the foot soldiers, you're the reason that we're here tonight, and we thank you for your courage, for your determination, and for your support of those foot soldiers. The City of Tallahassee-Leon County and the Tallahassee Community Redevelopment Agency have partnered to create something which all of us will soon see and will recognize and experience as a beautiful landmark for downtown Tallahassee. This project has been 4 years in coming, and we're so glad that we have come to celebrate what is clearly an innovative and creative memorial for those courageous individuals in the 20th century who have brought hope to those of us in the 21st century. I'd like to introduce my co-presider for the evening, Leon County Administrator Vince Long.
Thank you, Nita. It is such an honor to be here with you all this evening. I'm almost speechless by this turn. Almost, Anita. Almost speechless. Let me just say on behalf of the county how proud we are to join with our partners at the City of Tallahassee and to work with such dedicated and talented staff people at the CRA and at our planning department to see this project come to fruition. But what makes us most proud this evening, as Anita said, is celebrating the original foot soldiers of Tallahassee's struggle for civil rights. I couldn't help but think on my short walk this evening from the courthouse to City Hall how the Heritage Walk will serve as a reminder and serve as a source of inspiration to so many young people, so many generations of young people who, like young people do, may be dreaming about the impact that they'll make on the world and the impact that they could make on their community. But isn't it great that they will have footsteps to follow right downtown here in our community? Footsteps figuratively and footsteps literally. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this historic event tonight and for paying tribute to people of strength and to people of character who made this community a better place for all of us. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Pastor Brant Copeland of First Presbyterian Church for our invocation. Pastor.
Let us pray. Gracious God, creator and lover of all, you have made us in your image, and you take delight in our rich diversity. Though we often fail to live up to your best hopes for us, you have kept faith with this world you love. Tonight we remember those who through hardship and struggle inspired us to live up to the American dream. For those who stood for justice in the face of racism, for those who risked their jobs, their education, and even their lives, for the sake of a more perfect union and a community marked by equality, respect, and honor, we give you thanks tonight. As we recall their footsteps to freedom, guide our feet on the path they showed us, until that day when all people live in peace and unity, rejoicing to care for their neighbors. This we ask for the sake of your justice and love. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed tonight, Anita and I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our elected officials who you see seated at the front of the room. First, from the County Commission, I'd like to introduce Brian Deloge. We also have with us here tonight County Commissioner John Daly. And a man who you'll be hearing from in just a few moments, our Chairman of the County Commission, Nick Maddox. And Anita told me to have my head on a swivel up here to make sure I see whoever else comes in the room, but I couldn't help but to notice someone else who deserves recognition, Dr. Larry Robinson, President of Florida A&M University.
A great occasion. We should have Dr. Robinson on the agenda to speak. He says no. It is my pleasure to introduce Mayor John Marks, who you will hear from later on today. Mr. Marks. Commissioner Andrew Gillum is here with us this evening. I would also like to recognize Representative Alan Williams, who is with us.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, we're here tonight to celebrate and remember those individuals who stood for the civil rights of all. Tonight, many people memorialized on the Heritage Walk or their family members are here to view the sidewalk for the first time. We want to start tonight's program by sharing with you the names of the foot soldiers that are forever commemorated in the new sidewalk. We will read the name of the foot soldier and or their representative, and we would ask for them to stand if they're in attendance. Dr. R.L. Anderson. Or his representative. See here that he is represented by his son, Desi Andrews. Okay. Dorothy Brickler. Yes. Dorothy Brickler, thank you. And Anderson Brickler, thank you. Malachi Andrews. Dr. Wilmuth Baker. Eddie Barrington. Judith Benninger. There we are. Calvin Bess II. John Boardman. Father David Brooks. Barbara Broxton. John Broxton. Clement Kearney. Dr. Benjamin Cowens. Reverend Dr. Milton Cox, who's being represented by family friend Robert Wilfork. Priscilla Stevens Cruz. Samuel Dixon II, represented by his son, Samuel L. Dixie. Dixie, brother. Laura Dixie. Howard Dixon. John Dew. Patricia Stevens Dew, represented by her daughter, Tanariva Dew. I wouldn't have gotten close. Reverend Dr. King Solomon DuPont, represented by his son-in-law, Cecil Higgs. Willie Mae Fisher. Mary Ola Gaines, represented by her granddaughter, Renee Jefferson.
All right, for the second group of 25 people, Mr. Reuben Kingnon. Okay. All right. William H. Larkins, represented by his niece, Tanya Larkins. George Lewis II, represented by his son, George Lewis III. Clifton Van Brunt Lewis, represented by her daughter, Bird Lewis Mashburn. Reverend T.S. Lofton, represented by a family friend, Jeanette Nelson. Mr. James Mobley, represented by his son, James Mobley, Jr. Sybil Mobley, represented by her daughter, Janet Mobley Sermon. Angela Nance. It's so exciting to see when you call a name and somebody is looking around for that person or remembering them. It's very, very exciting. I wish I knew all the stories that you all have to tell. Mr. Edwin Norwood Sr., represented by his son, Edwin Norwood Jr. Better known as Corky. Better known as Corky. Carrie Patterson, represented by her son, Daryl Patterson. Willie K. Perkins, represented by her granddaughter, Barbara Norwood Noble. Oh, this family is represented here. Reverend Dr. J. Metz Rollins, represented by a family friend, Barbara Black. James and Lillian Shaw, represented by family friends, Louise Bennett and Wilbert Jefferson. Tobias Simon. Reverend Daniel B. Speed. Leonard Speed. Reverend Dr. Charles Kinsey Steele, represented by his grandson, Darrell Steele, Jr. Lois B. Steele, represented by her son, Darrell Steele, Jr. That is Darrell Steele Sr. Let me get that right. Reverend Dr. Henry M. Steele, who is here with us. Wilhelmina Jakes Street, represented by her nephew, Vince Larkins. Morris Thomas, represented by his wife, Janice Stanley Thomas. Dr. M.C. Williams. And last but not least, Miss Daisy Young, represented by her nephew, Roscoe Ellis. May I ask all of the foot soldiers and/or their representatives to kindly stand now and receive the applause from the audience. Okay, all right, I'm gonna have to work with Vince on this, you all. He left off a whole page of names, so don't get excited. Coming back, he's got a whole page of names to come back to. Otherwise, we're gonna have a problem up in here.
You knew I was going back to this page, right, Anita? There was no way. Dr. Holyfield just kept looking at me, and I was trying to figure it out until I went back through my pages here. Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend R.N. Gooden, represented by his son, Raleigh Noble Gooden, Jr. Grattan Graves. Richard Haley, represented by his son, Sundayata Haley. Dan Harmling. Reverend H. McNeil Harris. Johnny Herndon. Horace Hill, represented by family friend Luella Fry. Reverend J.H. Hobbs. Bishop Holyfield. Millicent Holyfield, represented by her son, Edward Holyfield. Reverend Dr. James L. Hudson, represented by his son, James Hudson. And Stephen Jones. One more time, everyone please stand up and be recognized.
Wow, how very, very, very exciting. Tonight, we'd also like to recognize the 18 individuals with the Tallahassee-Leon County Civil Rights Heritage Walk Committee who selected the foot soldiers. Without them, this project might never have taken place. It was really, really a complicated process for them, and I'd like to ask them to stand also as I read their names. Gloria Jefferson Anderson. Dovita Bacher. Althemis Barnes. Ern Wells Bowie. Queen Bruton. Petal Desai is with the city's legal department. She was. Daniel Donovan, and I will tell you more about him later. Will you stand, Dan? Mr. John Dew. Tricia Stevens Dew was also on this committee. Jennifer Coslow. Roxanne Manning, who is our CRA director. William Mattox. LaCry Mitchell. Linda Alice Raby, from whose book a lot of this information was obtained. Is she here? She is. Henry M. Steele. Amanda Thompson. Cynthia Williams. And Attorney Thornton Williams. One of the key individuals obviously involved in the selection and in bringing us together for this event is a name that you're all familiar with, and that is Mrs. Althemis Barnes, who is the founder and the executive director of the John G. Riley House and Museum. She's been an integral part of the Heritage Walk. She's an integral part of this community. She spent a week, this past week, doing all kinds of wonderful things, opening the new visitor center, and she'll tell you all about that. And please welcome Ms. Barnes at this time.
Ditto, ditto. What an exciting occasion. What an exciting reunion. And John, I can just see you just taking it all in, and Tananari trying to keep you contained. We thank all of you so much, so much. To paraphrase Tananari and Pat Dew from their book, Freedom in the Family, which was published in 2003, not all warriors fought on foreign soil. Not all warriors fought on foreign soil. Today, we are here to recognize, remember, and appreciate 58 individuals who fought for a noble cause here at home, a fight against oppression, inequality, and injustice. As the nation prepared to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 1963 Civil Rights March on Washington, the city of Tallahassee was making plans also, as the manager alluded to erect a perpetual monument to individuals who defied the laws of the land and led numerous protests to end segregated seating of blacks on city buses, at store lunch counters, and in theaters. The knowledge of these foot soldiers and their determination in the end made it possible for blacks to sit, ride, dine, and as Reverend Steele often would say, in dignity. Though often faced with brutality, hostility, jail time, and in some instances being ostracized by their own close friends and family members, they forged ahead until laws and the vestiges were removed. Thinking for a moment, had some of these citizens, had the times been different politically, socially, legally, many of these individuals that we are honoring would have been our elected officials, perhaps, our judges, owners of theaters, and what have you. Instead, their destiny was to rise up, often placing themselves in harm's way to bring about equal rights for all citizens. Their destiny was to open doors of equality through which they, some of them, would never live to experience fully and enjoy. Their destiny was to lend voice, hand, heart, brain power, and finances so that black citizens could experience a life free of humiliation. These struggles, these accomplishments, we memorialize, we appreciate, and celebrate today. Each footstep, each name, each life in the monument that we will soon unveil epitomize human struggle and triumph. The committee envisions that many scholars, students, and visitors in days, months, and years to come will come to this monument and want to know more about each life, expanding that archive of history even further. Today is a remembrance of 58 individuals who lived, led, and left a legacy. This is the occasion.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Altamise Barnes, a community treasure, don't you agree? Gentlemen, I'd now like to introduce to you the chairman of the CRA, the chairman of the county commission, Nick Maddox, who will be followed by the vice chair of the CRA and the mayor of Tallahassee, John Marks. Chairman Maddox.
I'm actually glad we have Vince as a breather in between that gracious statement that Ms. Barnes made. Good evening. I am pleased to be here before you today as chairman of Leon County Board of County Commissioners and chairman of the CRA to see the unveiling of the Civil Rights Heritage Walk. It is a true honor and privilege to be standing in front of some of the legendary foot soldiers and descendants of those foot soldiers. Today I proclaim that my soul belongs to the Lord, but my heart and mind and the job that I do rest with each and every one of you. It is a great tribute to remind us of how bold and courageous actions of a few people changed the course of history. Not only for this community, for this nation. That is exactly what the Civil Rights Heritage Walk represents. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize and acknowledge Roxanne Manning, the executive director of the CRA, the Heritage Walk Committee for all their many hours and hard work on this community asset. And last but not least, the artist at the Florida State University Master Craftsman's Studio. Those words were prepared for me to say today, but I couldn't just walk away just saying those words. You see, I believe that to trivialize this moment with just words that didn't come from the heart but came from staff would be wrong. And so I want to take the opportunity, if I might, to make this moment real by giving you some of my words and thoughts on what we're doing here today. Frederick Douglass said, "Power concedes nothing without demand." Whether the people who we're celebrating today believed in civil obedience, or if they believed in by any means necessary, there's one thing for certain, and that one thing is that they bled and died for me to have a chance to stand up here right here today. In second grade, I first learned about the Civil Rights Movement. And the assignment from my teacher that day was to go home and ask the oldest person in your family what it meant to them. I went home and I asked my great-grandmother, I said, Grandma, because that's what we called her. I said, what was the civil rights fight all about? And she could have taken hours to tell me, but she chose to use a sentence that I want to use here today. She said, boy, that's how she started, don't you ever take anything from a man that is less than what you deserve. And as a matter of fact, if that man tries to give you less than you deserve, you go and you take what you deserve. That's what the Civil Rights Movement was about. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget it. Because it influenced the way I thought about this moment today and the way I thought about my life. But as I grew older, I realized something even deeper that most people probably don't think about. When I think about the Civil Rights Movement, I say it's the American way. Samuel Adams led the Sons of Liberty to mastermind the Boston Tea Party. But I pose the question, what is the difference between the Boston Tea Party and when Malcolm, Edgar, and Martin died for me to stand right here today? There's one difference that I can point out. That difference is that Samuel Adams and his group was fighting for taxation without representation. But Martin and Malcolm and Edgar, they died for human rights. So be it one or the other, I bet you they stand before you and say today that they as Americans are proud that they stood, died, and fought for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
In the fall of 1965, a young kid from Miami was put on a bus. Roscoe was put on a similar bus, Roscoe Ellis. A young kid was put on a bus, a young African-American kid was put on a bus to come to Tallahassee to follow his parents to college. Although he was not going to Florida A&M, he was going to Florida State University. This was only his maybe second time in Tallahassee, Florida. That was in 1965, and I truly remember the experience of walking on a campus with 15,000 white kids and only 9 black kids. It was an experience, but one experience really stands out. during that period. It must have been something they call Old South Day. You all remember that? I had no clue. Not a clue about Old South Day. There I was on the corner of around, I guess it was Macomb and Tennessee Street, by myself. And then I looked up, coming from the west, a wagon with several young ladies on it, obviously from FSU, with these wide crinoline skirts and dresses on. Never seen anything like that in Miami. I'm sure that all of you all may have, some of you from Tallahassee may have seen that. And then as I continued to look, I saw some guys, men or whatever, in gray uniforms. Gray uniforms. Then I saw what I knew then was a Confederate flag. Now that was shocking enough for an 18-year-old kid who had never been in a situation like that before in his life, having grown up in Miami, Florida. But what was even more shocking was what was walking behind that wagon. There were 3 black men dressed as slaves, walking alongside and in back of that wagon. You think I was shocked before? Only thing I can say is, please excuse me, what in the hell have I gotten myself into now? That was an experience that I'll never, ever forget. To see something like that after coming from where I came from, Miami, was truly, Roscoe Ellis went to high school with me. Did we ever see anything like that in Miami? Nothing. No, Roscoe says no. No, but we survived. I certainly survived. And I never imagined standing on that corner in 1965 that I would be standing at this podium in 1940. Good evening. Thank you all for being here as we honor the lives of more than 50 civil rights activists and celebrate a powerful and inspirational addition to our community, the Tallahassee-Leon County Civil Rights Heritage Walk. First, I would like to thank the members of the Tallahassee Community Redevelopment Agency, the City of Tallahassee and Leon County for making this project possible, and for everyone who had a hand in organizing tonight's program. Later on, we will have the chance to see the official unveiling of the Heritage Walk, something I know that all of us are looking forward to. But before then, I want to take a moment and reflect on the lives of some of the individuals that you will see represented along the pathway. Now, we all know that each of their experiences, their stories, is a sobering reminder of a darker time in our nation's history. And yet, some chose to fight back, not through violence, but through peaceful protests. They would not be moved from their seats on the bus, nor would they relinquish their seat at the Woolworth lunch counter. These are just some of the seemingly small but immeasurable important actions that help pave the way for me, for Nick, and for a whole bunch of people in this room. And it paved the way for a brighter future. Yeah, play. Now, I encourage each one of you to learn more about each one of these individuals because they all have a story to be told and a brave story to be told. For example, I'm going to give you two examples. Priscilla Stevens Cruz. Am I pronouncing that right? Okay. They got another pronunciation here, and I'm not going to do that one. Priscilla Stevens Cruz. She's here tonight and is the sister of Patricia Stevens Dew. Hold up the picture, John. I just have to take a very moment of personal privilege with John Dew. John Dew is an attorney, and he was really the icon for those of us who went to law school during those early years, and when it was only 2 or 3 of us there, we all knew that John Dew, the attorney John Dew, was around somewhere if we needed some help. If we needed somebody to talk to, we knew that John Dew was available. Thank you, John, for being a part of it. But Priscilla Stevens Cruz, she and her sister, along with other foot soldiers, were arrested in February 1960 for protesting lunch counter segregation at Woolworth. After refusing to post bail, they spent 49 days in the Leon County Jail. 49 days. Ms. Cruz organized demonstrations and voter registration drives throughout North Florida as FAMU student activists in the 1960s. Stand up, please. Let us see who you are, young lady. Barbara Broxton. I heard the name called, but I didn't see anybody stand. Is anybody here representing Barbara Broxton? Well, okay, all the foot, no. Barbara Broxton also spent 49 days in the Leon County Jail, along with the Stevens sisters and other students. And that year in Watertown, New York, Ms. Broxton led a Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, picket line around the building where Woolworth's stockholders were gathered for their annual meeting. Now, can you imagine that? That took a lot of guts. In the meeting, she described the movement to desegregate the Woolworth counters in Tallahassee, Florida. Several of the stockholders introduced a resolution in support of desegregating all of Woolworth's counters, including stores in the north that had not yet integrated their facilities. As you all see, there were dozens of foot soldiers, dozens, each with his or her own story, each with a unique yet important story to tell. Every name on this sidewalk that you will see later represents an inspirational story about our nation. In Tallahassee, it represents an inspirational story about our city. And it represents inspirational stories about the civil rights struggle. Now, to talk to you about the Heritage Walk and how it was developed and the way we developed it and why we consider it so important for our community, we got a young man. Our senior planner for the Tallahassee-Leon County Planning Department, Mr. Dan Donovan. Dan. No. Well, as usual, she's telling me what to do.
He only listens about 50% of the time. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go on, I would like to recognize a person I saw in the audience, and I think she's still there, former Mayor Dorothy Inman Johnson. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Chairman Maddox. They're rushing me along, but this is important, isn't it? We shouldn't rush this, should we? I have to have one more person come up and maybe two or three. And I'm thinking about actually what you said to me earlier, Mr. Dew, this evening. He said, Anita, we have a big job to do. He said, we have to let the young people know what was sacrificed and what they need to do in the future. I think that is absolutely critical because so many people don't know. But that being said, I think it would be inappropriate for us not to ask Commissioner Andrew Gillum to come up and just say a few words. This is unrehearsed. He was not planning on doing this. But ask him just to say a few words, and followed by Commissioners Deloge and Daly if they would like to say a few words.
Right. Unrehearsed is correct. But God is good. And he's good all the time. And as I was sitting there, Representative Williams and I were going back and forth, just feeling rather unqualified for this moment. It is so tremendously important when you have a sense of self-realization, right? Like why it is you sit, why you stand, why you're here, why you're present, that there are no accidents, that there are no mistakes. That the steps of a good man or woman are ordered. And I feel, I think like many of us here, I feel overwhelmingly, indescribably blessed to be in this room, to be in this moment, to be with each and every one of you. And I'll be brief, only to say that it is the very example that many of you all set that made it possible for me as a student at Florida A&M University and a student government president to lead my share of protests down to the Capitol, to stand in the gap for the things that I felt needed to be spoken up for and my peers felt that needed to be spoken up for. And I think what many of you all should be proud to know today is that that legacy continues as recent as being edified by the Dream Defenders who sat those young people who many of them are rattlers, and they had sympathizers all over the country and certainly here in the city. And whether you agree with their political position or not is not as important as the fact that they felt a calling and they saw the example, they saw the writing, and the footsteps were ordered, and they knew exactly what to do because the example had been set. And so for 31 days, they slept on the marble floors of the Florida Capitol, irritating all the powers that be, so much so that they're changing Florida law to prevent that from ever happening again. That's right. But they did it by your example. And so for that, my heart is grateful. This moment is so significant, so important for each and every one of us, because like has been said before, I know I couldn't stand here. I couldn't sit here. But by your example. And so God bless you, God keep you, and I love you. Thank you. Representative Williams.
Good evening. And as the mayor and commissioner and so many others have said, we stand here, and although we may be standing right behind a podium, we stand on so many shoulders. And I will tell you that as state representative but more importantly, as a young boy that grew up on the south side of Tallahassee. See so many individuals here who helped raise me, right? It was a true village. I even see Mr. Barrington, who, I had more hair back then when he used to cut my hair, but who was my barber, who my mom said she was probably one of the only places she would allow me to walk safely to and from was from our house all the way to Mr. Barrington's shop with $5 in my pocket to go get a haircut. It's great to be here and to recognize so many giants in our community. Names that you hear about, that you read about, whether it's you see it in Gerald Inslee's articles or you see them in Altamise Barnes' books and stories. I'm just glad to say that I'm a product of this community and that I'm a product of all the hard work and all the effort that each and every one of you gave. And to your family members, I look at Dr. Sermon, who's sitting in front of me. I grew up just a stone's throw from our house, but I was so honored to be called one of Sybil Mobley's boys. And as I take my seat, Commissioner Gillum alluded to this. This past summer, as we talked about the Dream Defenders, I was sitting here with our student body president at Florida A&M University, and as they called out the names, I could see the pride on the faces of so many individuals who are being honored here today. And I said, these are our original Dream Defenders. Original Dream Defenders. So, Commissioner Gillum, we all were a little bit surprised by our city manager, but we appreciate the opportunity. At the state capitol, you have to be a little bit more prepared, Joe Bullard, when these opportunities come, because you never know when the speaker may call on you and say, Representative, you have anything to say. So thankfully, I have my smartphone and I keep my little notes from Reverend R.B. Holmes. Sometimes he gives out little kernels of knowledge on Sunday, so I put them in my phone. So that's what I'm doing when you see me in church. I'm not playing Candy Crush. I'm taking down notes. But he made this one statement, and I think it was so fitting. He quoted someone. He said, "Don't worry about failures. Worry about the chances when you miss. Worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try." And so many of you didn't worry about what would happen, didn't worry about what would become of your time at Florida A&M or your time in high school for Reverend Steele, who's behind for Reverend Darrell Steele. You didn't worry about those failures. You didn't worry about the next day. You worried about being in the moment, being present at the time, because you knew that you were doing something for the greater good. I tell you that the greater good is sitting right before you today, whether it's Commissioner Chairman Maddox, whether it's our great mayor, John Marks, whether it's Commissioner Andrew Gillum, whether it's John Daly, whether it's Brian DeLoge, because this is not the Tallahassee that once was. It's definitely not the Tallahassee where we want to get to, but it's definitely not the Tallahassee that it once was. And it's an exercise in democracy, but it's also an exercise in faith. Thank you so much. God bless you.
You got politicians and microphones. This is a problem. And I'll be very brief. Let me just say, in 1959, my parents moved down here not knowing a soul, no family. No. My dad took a job at Florida State teaching, and that was the year I was born. And I grew up on the north side, and I grew up in a very nice lifestyle. And Tallahassee has been great to us. And so I'm a big believer, as it says in Luke, to those whom much is given, much is expected. And if you look around tonight, everybody in this room has so much to be thankful for. And I am in awe of the change that y'all went through and the things that you did and the suffering you had. and the changes you made. And so now it's time to pay it forward and look at the next generation. And let's not forget that you can make a difference. So it's an honor to be here, and I just appreciate the chance to serve. Thank you.
Good evening. The problem with going last is everything's been said just about from a political standpoint. When Anita asked for the younger politician to stand up, she turned around and she goes, "You are young, aren't you, John?" I too sit here in awe. I really do. I am of that generation. We studied the civil rights. We did not participate. I just turned 40. For us, it is important that tradition is passed down. For us, it's important that the story is kept alive. Like the state representative said, I am very proud of our community. I'm proud of the progressive aspects of our community. City and the county don't necessarily get along on every single vote, but when you look at your 12 leaders, and I think I can say this on behalf of everyone, when you look at your 12 leaders from the city and the county, it is a progressive movement moving forward. And I am very proud to be a part of it. In particular for this project, I am proud to have served on the CRA when the original vote took place. And this is something that I look forward to talking to my 4- and 2-year-old that hopefully are in bed right now, and telling them the story and the small part that I played in today's society. But I do have one bit of new information. And there is somebody that does need to be recognized that has not been mentioned. And he no longer is serving with us, and he's no longer living in Tallahassee. But former County Commissioner Bob Ratcliffe played a very important role from the very beginning with the formation of this idea. And if anything, just wanted to recognize Bob on the record this evening for playing a major role at the beginning of this project. Thank you all very much.
Boy, it's so hard to follow with words, words like those that have been spoken tonight. I've got some down here, but they're not up to it. The words with such power and meaning and purpose and weight. And instead of talking much more about it, it's a great transition to introduce someone who did something. And this is a man who, as the mayor alluded to a little earlier, had a vision, and he had the wherewithal to make this project happen. Dan Donovan was home watching a city commission meeting and listening to city commissioners discuss a way to honor our civil rights history at the corner of Monroe and East Jefferson Street. And Dan had a vision. And I'll let Dan tell you the rest of the story. Dan Donovan.
Well, good evening, everyone. 500 channels and I watch a commission meeting. Well, speaking to what he called place memory, the philosopher Edward Casey said, "What is contained in place is on its way to being well remembered." Well, a block from here, in a place where it happened, we want to contain history that is fading from our living memories. In the concrete, we hope that we have made a place where in 50 years or 100 years, someone will look down and say, "I never noticed this before," and want to know who Eddie Barrington was, or Clifton Lewis, or what in the world a lunch counter was. Now, normally in this room, I refer to myself in the third person, as staff. And never have I been prouder to call myself that as we dedicate this entirely homegrown project. More than 4 years ago, following a public hearing on the demolition of the old McCrory's dime store, my boss, Wayne Tedder, recognized the value of an idea for what we came to know simply as the sidewalk. And encouraged by fellow staff, elected officials, and the citizens to whom we presented the idea, the Tallahassee-Leon County Planning Department gave me the time to develop the idea into a design. At the CRA, Roxanne Manning found funding and guided the working committee, several of whom were foot soldiers themselves, through choosing material to be included in the sidewalk. In the beginning, the design marked only the lunch counter sit-ins of the 60s. The committee, however, knew that an opportunity like this is rare and that things don't happen quickly, and they wisely decided to include the 1956 bus boycott in the memorial. The FSU Master Craftsman Studio isn't staff, but we're partners in making beautiful places in our city. I had a picture in my mind as I was drawing, but when I saw the terrazzo panels for the first time, as they came out of the forms over there on Gaines Street, I was struck by how even more beautiful the sidewalk was going to be, and that it was really going to happen. In the last few months, in no less an effort than installing the sidewalk itself, Angie Taylor and others coordinated city and county staff in putting together this evening's event. Everything from press to street closures to food. Angie found and invited the living foot soldiers and the families of those who have passed away. For me, over the past few years, the most satisfying thing has been the way the sidewalks come to be everyone's project, and the way that so many staff members have wanted to bring to the project the work they do best. And nowhere is this truer than in the Public Works Department. Over years of obstacles, maybe appropriately so, to a monument about persistence, Gabe Menendez and David Earle knew that the sidewalk could be built where it belongs. And over a hot August weekend, their crew finally fit the pieces into place, carefully and beautifully and with great pride. I believe that you come to know a city, especially the one you call home, by its details. And I'm proud to live in a city that knows, among all the big plans, that a tiny gesture in a sidewalk can speak enormously to the heart of who we are.
This man is so awesome. Sometimes when staff come to me with an idea, it's broad, it is certainly not in layman's terms. It has all sorts of numbers and codes and everything else associated with it. Dan Donovan is a person who has always been able to sit across from me and make me see his vision. And this is certainly one of those cases when staff came forward and said, they did it on purpose because they knew I would approve it if they said Dan. They said, Dan is doing the design. So of course that just solidified the whole thing because I knew it would be meaningful, I knew it would be significant, and I knew it would have the detail that would make all of us very, very proud. Dan, would you join Vince and I, please?
He used to be our secret, Anita.
I know he's not a secret anymore. We are very proud of him. With heartfelt appreciation to Daniel Donovan for his tireless dedication in his vision and design of the Tallahassee-Leon County Civil Rights Heritage Sidewalk, September 30th, 2013.
I said in this room 4 years ago, it's been my privilege.
Dan, when you think about history, and we look back on this day, where we are recognizing history, and that you played a part in recognizing that history, that has to be an absolutely proud moment, and we thank you. Okay. I look out at the faces of the foot soldiers, and as comments are being made, I see people's eyes welling up with tears. I know this is an emotional event for everyone, whether they were there or whether they know that their parents or their relatives or their friends were there. So again, thank you all for your patience this evening. I'd now like to share a bit of history with you in the form of video. This is one of the many surprises of the evening. Our WCOT staff is producing a full documentary that will be available in November on this very topic. But what we have to show you this evening is just a teaser. It's just a preview of the documentary, and we'd like to play that for you right now.
The Civil Rights Movement in Tallahassee was a local struggle for black equality, but it was also part of the larger battle for racial justice throughout the South.
It was a very courageous stance for people who knew that, for me, I think they could feel that a change was coming, that this thing was bigger than themselves.
This is the beginning. This is not the end. Because from the very beginning, whites knew this is more than just about where a black person is going to sit on the bus. This is about changing race relations. This is about what is going to become a struggle for black rights and equality.
There was no question about turning back or whether we should do this or not do the other. It's just head forward toward freedom.
This project is the exact kind of project that Tallahassee should be doing more of. We should begin to start looking at our authentic history, getting with the people who actually know the stories. If we don't get these stories in time, we will no longer have anybody around who can authenticate the history.
It began with a lot of planning, and the city came to us with an idea, and we made it a reality. This has got to be one of the largest scope projects we've ever encountered in my time here. I think we were able to really perform and do something that is going to be long-lasting for Tallahassee and important to our culture and history here.
The footprints with all the different names is what was most impressive to me. And when I went and looked, I said, you know, there are some people in Tallahassee who are going to be so thrilled that the work of their parents, their grandparents, their ancestors has not been forgotten. And that finally all of those days of fear and marching and protesting so that life could be better for all of us will finally be recognized in a very prominent way.
Anybody you knew? Yes. Did you? All right, all right. We'd like for anyone who has information to offer about either the bus boycott or the 1960s lunch counter sit-ins to please be a part of this documentary. And what we're asking you to do is to join our WCOT staff immediately following this program. If you have a story to tell and you are prepared to tell it this evening, we would like to get you on camera telling that story. If you're not prepared tonight and you need to go check your facts and come back tomorrow or another time, we will accommodate you, but we do want to get this documentary done by November, so that I think the plan is that it will be a 50-minute documentary on these two special events in Tallahassee. Yeah. When you think about the Heritage Sidewalk, there are many personal stories that go along with each foot soldier. Tonight, we have asked one of the foot soldiers to speak on behalf of the 58 that are memorialized in the sidewalk. Reverend Henry Steele was just a teenager when he was arrested at a lunch counter sit-in. He is among one of the youngest individuals arrested during the 1960s. Please welcome Reverend Henry Steele.
Thank you so very kindly. And to all of the, well, this very colorful background here. Not the Tallahassee of years ago. I don't hear many amens. Are they all gone? We've come a long way. Even in public rooms, blacks would be over here and whites over here. Or whites up here and blacks are back there. We've come a long way. And when I sit here today, or when I stand here and look around this evening at the crowd, I'm overwhelmed. And I saw Priscilla wiping tears, it was making me get all misty-eyed as well. And speaking of Priscilla Stevens Krause, I'll never say it right. And John, next to her, Patricia Stevens, Dew's husband, the three of them, Priscilla, Patricia, John. I don't think I met John right off, but I met Priscilla and Patricia first when it came to the lunch counter sit-ins here in Tallahassee. And she has been recognized, but you have never, ever met or seen persons as involved and as committed, unrelenting, persistent. It was their life, their heart. And I miss Patricia. And I'm glad John brought her photograph. We preached a funeral in Lee Auditorium last year. And a whole lot of people I'm looking at tonight, I didn't see them there. Uh-oh. We are not here actually to honor any particular individuals. It just grew into something. It originally started with the persons who picketed and protested the lunch counters. Of course, they were backed by everybody else, almost. Everybody, every African American who struggled in that time, every Caucasian person who struggled, who marched, who worked, are foot soldiers. In one way or the other, there were those who were actually out there with their feet on the ground. There are other people like Daisy Young, Rodney's aunt, who was secretary of the movement for so many years. She worked at Florida A&M University, but she did all the secretarial work for the Inner Civic Council, NAACP, for many, many years. Daisy Young. There were people who did phone calls, that kind of thing, made contact, who provided refreshments for certain events, for certain meetings. There were people who worked in various capacities. Some never went to a freedom meeting. And as I looked at us this evening, I said, this kind of reminds me of the mass meetings, just more people. There wasn't standing room. That goes back to the boycott. Tallahassee had already been involved in a big way when the student sit-ins came. So we were ready. I was ready. I was so inspired. I was so involved. I was so elated that this was going on because I knew it was real and I knew it was going to be and I knew it was a turning point or the beginning of a turning point. Something of racial prejudice and segregation and all that kind of stuff tormented me all of my very young years. And I never could understand it. And I'd always, every time I got an opportunity, I'd drink some white water. Only way I didn't drink the white water is there was no white water. So I went without drink. Black water was not good until they passed that separate but equal, and then they made all the fountains nice and beautiful, but marked white colored. It was hot many times. You'd have a nice ice cooler for white folks. Had this little thing attached to something. Oh, cool. Humiliating. We were tired. We were tired. We were tired. And things just had to happen. Inevitably, it was going to happen. And on the backdrop of Tallahassee's movement of Montgomery, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and the assassination or the murdering of Harry T. Moore. That was just before our family moved to Tallahassee, 51 or so, something like that. Everybody ought to know about Harry T. Moore. He's a patrol, all of us. And while I'm mentioning that, Ben Green has a book, Before His Time. You want to know about foot soldiers? Get his book, Before His Time, by Ben Green. He talks about Harry T. Moore and the awful sacrifice and great contribution he made. Get Patricia and Tanana Reedu's book, All in the Family. Freedom in the Family. If you want to know about Tallahassee Civil Rights, that book, where's Glenda Raby? There she is. The Pain and the Promise. Get that book, where she took that title from a speech, the closing speech of one of, that my dad presented at Florida State, I think the year before or the year he passed away, The Pain and the Promise. Glenda Raby, you want to know it? Mark those things. Get it. Dr. C.U. Smith, right here. What's the name of that book, son? What's the name of that book? I'm getting younger. The one on the movement. There's no way for us to articulate, to mention everybody and everything that happened. And there was no way in the world to have footsteps of everybody who participated in the movement. It's just a rambling sample. That's why let's not think about what honor I'm going to get. We didn't start out thinking about any honor, didn't care about any honor, and even now, let's celebrate the spirit of the movement. Let's celebrate deals, the purposes. Let's celebrate where we've come. The committee had a very difficult job, very difficult. I regret, and I'm sorry I was not able to be in on a whole lot of sessions, but they struggled. But now, if you really want to jump on somebody about somebody's name or somebody not there, get Dan. He told me we cannot have but so many names. So I see people even here tonight, I know were involved in the movement. I could call names, but their names are not mentioned. That's not the important thing. We salute Tallahassee. We salute Tallahassee because it wasn't easy for our community. This was a little southern town, sure enough, folks, just getting ready to grow. And it was as mean and Jim Crow and nasty as it could be. And I was thrilled. I was just thrilled when Carrie Patterson, Wilhelmina Jake sat down on the bus. I was thrilled because I've been looking. Well, NAACP and there have been other matters going before the courts. But here, with Rosa Parks sitting down, I was so excited I couldn't keep still. And there was no way in the world that my parents were going to keep my older brother and me at home if something was going on. And the very first sit-ins, my older brother and I were participants. Those of us walking the picket line and carrying the pickets or sitting in, we weren't the only ones involved. There were other people. But at the beginning of the sit-ins in Tallahassee, you can look at Priscilla. I can see them now. Oh, they were at our house more than we were. and John, and the many cases. And people like Dr. Ryle, Jeanette. She getting ready to go to Jacksonville, to the Carter G. Woodson Convention, and she has a little brochure there. She has Tallahassee on it. She's going to talk about something of an island girl, African-American island girl, and she's talking about her father. And one of the girls who sat down on the bus lived with her. So there are foot soldiers everywhere you go. There's foot soldiers in the people who would come and bring solace to my mother, our family, to come and do something to help things move along. Because believe me, it wasn't easy. It was not easy. Those students who were in school were concerned about getting their work. They were concerned about the money their parents were spending and whomever else. But we walked, we marched, we prayed. Before every activity, we'd have strategy sessions. We'd do role modeling, practicing sit-ins, practicing somebody knocking you upside the head, blowing smoke over you. You could smoke everywhere back then. If you sit in lunch counter, they come and blow smoke over you, spit on you, nudge you. It was not easy. It was a sacrifice. But there's something, I'm closing, there's something about civil rights workers. Let nobody fool you. And as we all seem to be gathered here around one common thing, that's what it was like. That's intense. Everybody sincere. Everybody excited and interested, but also apprehensive. because you know about the people were employed by the state or the county, the government one way or the other, the universities. It was difficult. My father's church, Bethlehem Church, had a congregation full of teachers and professors and other business leaders, prominent people, as well as the ordinary mass folk. So it reached over into our family in a whole lot of ways. My dad caught a whole lot of stuff. Trying to pastor Bethel Baptist Church, bringing it through a transition anyway. People suffered hardships. I remember Patricia and Priscilla, and it had gotten so bad with Patricia, not to anyone's surprise, because you never saw anybody so energetic and so enthused and so doing it, that she almost suffered a breakdown while here at Florida A&M. Wasn't easy. My mother, I don't think I saw Mama on the picket line more than twice. And she was on the picket line. I started to say carrying him. But I think she was also rolling Derek. One time I came home, she was rolling Derek in a stroller at Winn-Dixie. Reverend Farrell, Elder Farrell, pastor of St. Mary, was a cashier. Time is up. I got the cue. And I knew that this was going to be too big and too hard. But thank God for foot soldiers. I am reminded of the old lady in Montgomery. And incidentally, we had come here from Montgomery, and we go back and go into Mass meetings. There's an old lady in the movement in Montgomery. They were still walking, and somebody passed her on the corner and said, "Ma'am, aren't you tired?" This old lady said, "Yes, sir. My feet is tired, but my soul's are resting." Foot soldiers attitude.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Steele, for your contribution, your family's contribution to ensure civil rights for all of us. Now we'll hear from the next generation. Florida State University student, Lyrica Peterson, who is an intern with the Master Craftsman Studio and who helped create the sidewalk, and Florida A&M University student body president, Anthony Siders II.
When they asked me to do this, I did not know what I was getting into, but I am so glad that I'm here tonight. It's been absolutely wonderful. I'd like to start by saying thank you to Florida State University and the Master Craftsman Studios for allowing me the opportunity to work on such an important public memorial. Working on the sidewalk was an amazing experience because I was not a part of the civil rights movement itself, but I'm proud. Like 22, that's never gonna happen. But I am proud to now be a part of keeping the movement's history alive. Everyone that will walk here will know that the importance of Tallahassee's involvement during the civil rights movement. And it is important not only to remember history, but to respect everyone who was involved, recognized or not, for having such complete belief in what they were set out to accomplish, as well as appreciation for the effort their inspiring acts are still having today. What I learned during this project was that most who participated here in Tallahassee were students. And given the general impression of college students, I was in complete awe that these students were so willing to sacrifice their futures for everyone else's, not knowing if they would succeed, but knowing that what they were doing was right. One story in particular that impressed me was a story about two female Florida A&M University students who were arrested for placing themselves in a position to incite a riot. This riotous act was because they refused to move from the whites only to the colored section on a bus. What caused me to really shake my head was that the white woman that they were sitting next to did not even object to them sitting there, but they were arrested anyways. I believe that this sidewalk will keep reminding people what went on, while also reminding us all to keep believing. The civil rights movement that began 60 years ago is still alive and is as important as it was decades ago. But if we keep remembering and believing in freedom, we can continue to work for equality and civil rights for everyone. I'd like to end by saying thank you so much to all of you who participated for standing up and sitting in for freedom. We would not be here if not for you. Thank you so much.
Before I move forward, let me say what an honor and a privilege to be, it is to be in the same environment of the folks of whom I read about, I've listened to. It is just, while I was watching the video and listening to all of the testimonies up here, I was getting the goosebumps right there next to those two gentlemen, and it's just extremely overwhelming. So before I move forward, please, one more time, let's stand up and show them our appreciation by giving them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are here to honor and give reverence to many individuals who've rallied, protested, and marched simply to give us the profound opportunity to run. A persistent level of change when at that time the only reality was a dream. The unwavering commitment displayed by our loved ones closed an open wound of democracy. They answered the call of justice when history and opportunity was bold and unequivocally persistent when it knocked on this nation's door. They responded to the ever-lingering statement of turning that aforementioned dream into a reality and allowing that reality to manifest within the very souls who are sworn to preserve and protect the legacy of this country's future. And yes, even today's actions remind us that there is work still to be done, that the fight for justice and equality is necessary so long as we have breath in our bodies, so long as we do it together. But above all, it reminds us that good is not good enough when greatness is more aligned and affixed with our future. So again, we thank and honor those who provided the freedom of opportunity. And as long as I represent FAMU students like Patricia Stevens-Dew, Wilmeth Baker, Eddie Barrington, Samuel Dixie, Horace Hill, and a host of others, we will seize and fulfill that opportunity. And if anyone decides to stand in between FAMU and her promise, her legacy, her past, and her future, we send them one message with one sound, with one voice, as one body, as one people, as one family. For whatever, backwards, never. FAMU today, FAMU tomorrow, and FAMU forever.
Well, Mr. Dew, I don't know. I think our future is in good hands. What do you think? We have some, yes, it's a beginning. Vince and I would like to thank all of you for coming this evening and being a part of this awesome celebration. It has surpassed certainly my every expectation. I hope that it has also surpassed yours. It's a very emotional time for many of us who were not here in Tallahassee at the time, but certainly know of what you speak that was happening in communities across the nation. So again, thank you to our foot soldiers. We'd like to ask you to please, we need to get a photograph of all of the foot soldiers before you leave and/or the representatives. We want you to enjoy the reception and also join our WCOT staff in the back of the room if you have a story that you would like to have documented. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have the benediction by Reverend Henry Hinkst. Reverend.
For those who began and took the risks of footsteps to freedom in this community years ago, we give thanks. For those who supported this critical, needed change in the movement toward justice in this community, we give thanks to God. For those who did not get to experience the fruit of their tireless footsteps towards justice and are no longer earthbound, we give thanks to God, and may they rest in peace. For those who remembered the more formal beginnings of the footsteps to freedom in this place and took the initiative to honor those brave walkers towards freedom with the Civil Rights Commemorative Sidewalk, we give thanks to God. And for those who organized this recognition ceremony as an announcement to the whole community that those who took these early footsteps to freedom are not forgotten, we give thanks to God. May the dedication of this Civil Rights Sidewalk, may it not stop the footsteps to freedom. May a multitude of other footsteps to freedom continue in the present and in the future. And may it be footsteps for all persons in all aspects of their lives. With that understanding, go into the world in peace. Be strong and of good courage. Honor all persons. Hold fast to that which is good. Listen and speak the truth. Be gentle with yourself and others. Serve the world as you are able. Celebrate the gift of life and be at peace with God. Amen.